Jon Flewellen, and we're going to talk about how to diagnose a faulty thermostat, water pump, and a heater. Now I'm going to tie all these things together. We're going to talk about these individually first, and then we're going to show you how they work in conjunction with each other. Now, as you can see, this is a thermostat that's obviously got a lot of wear on it, and it's dirty. And what happens is when the thermostat gets dirty like this, it will clog up and cause it to stick closed. When that thermostat sticks closed, coolant can't flow through the engine, and that's a major problem. If the engine can't cool down, then the engine's going to overheat. So this thermostat is key. You have to keep one of these in your engine to regulate the coolant temperature. You don't want to not put a thermostat in here because it won't be able to check itself. So once the engine gets to a certain temperature, the thermostat will open up, allow coolant to come in, cool the engine down, and send it through the rest of the system. So once the engine gets to a certain temperature again, the thermostat opens up, coolant flows in, cools the engine down, and etc. It's a never-ending circle. Once again, when the thermostat sticks closed, it will cause the engine to overheat. This puts pressure on the water pump because it can't circulate the needed coolant in the system to keep everything cool. Now when that happens, it can start leaking here at the top around the thermostat housing, which would be right here where it mates to the block. The way to tell if your water pump is not working properly, a few things will happen. On the bottom of the water pump, there's a weep hole. If coolant is leaking through that weep hole, that means the seal that keeps the coolant in the water pump is failing. You can look down behind the serpentine belt, look on your crank pulley, as well as the serpentine belt. If it's wet with coolant and the only place that it's coming from is from behind the water pump, more than likely your water pump is failing or has already failed. So the thing to do at that point is replace the water pump. Now, the next problem that we have is the heater. The heater is inside of the bulkhead, inside of the passenger compartment, underneath the dash. What sometimes happens is it will get clogged up. Once again, if the water can't be pumped through the system, it can't go through the heater core and be released inside of the cabin for heat. When that happens, the inside of the cabin will remain cold even with the heat on and your vent door open. It doesn't matter how much you try to crank up the fan, the heat just won't transfer because it's not getting into the heater. That creates another problem because if the coolant isn't flowing through there, it's not flowing through the engine anywhere else. Therefore, it's not getting back to the radiator to dissipate its heat. So that's another cause of the heater not to work. There's a reason why it can be traced back to your thermostat, or it can be traced back to your water pump. So it's really easy to check those three things out, or check those two things out, and that'll lead you to the next problem. So if you change out your thermostat and things go back to normal, you're good. If you have a leaky water pump, never, ever, ever put the sealant in there to stop your water pump from leaking. Just replace your water pump, put more coolant in it, and go on. Now, the heater, on the other hand, it's like a miniature radiator. That you're going to have to pull out the bottom of your dash and replace it. One way you can tell that it's failing is if you get in the passenger compartment and your floor is saturated with coolant. That means your heater core has sprung a leak, so to speak. You're going to have to get that replaced, or if you can't do it or afford to do it, you're going to have to cap it off because the more you run it, the more coolant is going to come into that heater core, and it's eventually going to ruin your interior of the car. So the water pump, the thermostat, the heater core, and the radiator are all married together. If one fails, it has an effect on the other two or three. That's why it's always important to make sure that if you're not sure, get it checked out for one. But if you see an obvious leak, like right here at the thermostat housing, if, you know, being aluminum, this tends to crack. So if you have a leak there, simply replace the thermostat housing, refill with coolant, and make sure you put the proper gasket and tighten it down to spec. Now, taking into consideration, once you have everything checked, make sure everything is working well and the way it's supposed to. With that, I'm Jon Flewellen, and thanks for watching.